Imagine a volcano, silent for centuries, suddenly erupting near a growing city. No warnings, no records, no plan. This is the reality for millions living near volcanoes in sub-Saharan Africa. But how do we assess risk in places where data is missing or incomplete? Today, I'll take you through a study that doesn't just ask that question, it answers it. Through innovative methods, expert collaborations, and local insights, we explore how science can still guide action, even in the most data-poor context. Good day, everyone. I am Janelle Ross Tios-Milio, and I'll be presenting a study titled Assessing Volcanic Hazard and Exposure in a Data-Poor Context, a case study for Ethiopia, Kenya, and Cabo Verde. Before we start, let me guide you to this presentation's overview. First, we'll discuss the introduction. Next is the project scope and study area, followed by the methodology, then results and discussion, and finally, the conclusions. To start, volcanoes produce a wide range of hazards, and understanding their impact requires assessments at both the local and global level. Local assessments help communities prepare, while global ones help inform policy and investment decisions. However, in places like sub-Saharan Africa, reliable data are often missing and many volcanoes have few recorded eruptions. This can lead to serious underestimation of risk. The aim of this study was to create a practical, scalable approach to assess volcanic hazards and exposure, using expert inputs and modeling. So even in data-poor areas, people can still support better risk awareness and decision-making. Next is the project scope and study area. This project was part of the Africa Disaster Risk Financing Initiative, a World Bank that led effort to better understand and manage natural hazards across the continent. As shown in Figure 1, the study focused on 9 volcanoes, 6 in the East African Rift System across Ethiopia and Kenya, and 3 on hotspot islands in Cabo Verde. These regions have some of the highest proportions of undated Holocene volcanoes in the world. For Ethiopia, Kerbeti, Aluto, Fentali volcanoes are studied. For Kenya, Menengai, Longonot, and Suwa volcanoes are studied. Then for Cabo Verde, Fogo, Brava, and Santo Antao are included. These volcanoes were not randomly chosen. They were selected based on 3 key factors: their proximity to large populations, their potential for explosive eruptions, and their lack of detailed eruption history. Because field data are limited, the study used a structured methodology illustrated in the Figure 2. It began with expert elicitation to fill in data gaps, followed by numerical hazard modeling and GIS-based exposure analysis. This approach allowed the team to map potential hazards and estimate exposure even in the absence of complete eruption records, supporting better risk awareness, planning, and policy decisions. Next is the methodology. This study addressed volcanic risk in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Cabo Verde using a 3-part approach tailored to data-scarce environments. First, expert elicitation was conducted using the SHELF framework, combining surveys and workshops to gather informed judgments on eruption frequency and characteristics. Next, hazard modeling assessed 3 primary hazards: tephra-fall via the tephra-2 model under varied wind conditions, then pyroclastic flows and lahars through GIS-based drainage analysis, and vent location uncertainty using kernel density estimation. Finally, an exposure assessment overlaid hazard maps with data on population, infrastructure, and GDP using GIS, estimating potential impacts under different eruption scenarios and tephra load thresholds. Each method was adopted to work effectively despite limited eruption records, ensuring an effective risk assessment across the region. Let's proceed to the results and discussion. This slide shows the outcomes of the expert elicitation process visualized in Figure 3. Due to limited eruption records, the team grouped volcanoes into 4 categories based on similarities in structure and behavior. Mount Aluto and Kerbeti were grouped together because both have caldera-forming histories. Aluto is better studied, and insights were supplemented with data from well-known analogs like Pantelleria in Italy. Mount Menengai was treated separately since it's morphologically distinct and appeared to have more frequent explosive eruptions, while Mount Fentale, Longonot, and Suswa were grouped together and compared to Rungwe and Tanzania, which share similar volcanic features. For Cabo Verde, only Fogo had enough data to support elicitation. Brava and Santo Antao lack sufficient historical information. From the figure, we can see that Fogo has a higher probability of small eruptions, while Menengai has the highest potential for larger explosive events. The experts also agreed on eruption durations. For East African volcanoes, a typical eruption might include 8 hours of intense activity, followed by gas and ash emission over a week, and up to 6 to 12 months of effusive lava flows. For Fogo, historical eruptions lasted to 1 to 3 months, and sometimes much longer. This information is critical for crisis planning. Next, this slide covers the results from hazard modeling, which focus on tephra fall, flows, and vent location uncertainty. In Figure 6, we see tephra dispersal patterns for Mount Menengai and Mount Fogo. The Menengai's broader hazard zones are due to 2 factors: the frequent large eruptions and dominant easterly winds pushing ash towards populated areas. In contrast, Fogo's smaller footprint reflects its island geography, though it remains highly exposed due to strong winds and low rainfall, which encourage ash resuspension, a key secondary hazard. For flows, Figure 9 illustrates how drainage basin models are highly sensitive to vent location. For both Suswa and Fentale, shifting the vent location by just a few kilometers significantly changed the predicted flow hazard zones. This highlights the importance of accurate vent data and topography, especially in regions where detailed DEMs are not available. Together, these results show that while models are useful, their output is highly sensitive to input assumptions, making transparency and uncertainty communication is essential. Next, this slide focuses on the exposure assessment, which overlaid hazard footprints with socioeconomic data. Figure 13 displays the number of people, value of buildings, and GDP exposed across different tephra thresholds. Mount Menengai and Mount Longonot show the highest exposures. That is largely due to proximity to Nakuru, a city of over 500,000 people. Mount Suswa's tephra zones extends toward Nairobi, increasing risk for its 5.5 million residents. The study also evaluated the exposure under future conditions. GDP exposure is projected to increase by nearly tenfold by 2050 due to economic growth in vulnerable areas. For example, in Mount Corvetti's flow hazard zone, GDP increases from $259 million in 2010 to nearly $3 billion in 2050. To check reliability, exposure was estimated using 3 datasets: the World POP, GPW, and Landscan. While the total exposed population varied slightly, the relative rankings of exposure were consistent, suggesting the findings are robust for decision-making. For the summary of results, first, the expert elicitation. The expert elicitation process was essential for filling data gaps. By grouping volcanoes based on their geological analogs and using the shelf framework, the team was able to reach consensus on eruption frequencies, magnitudes, and durations, even where historical records were missing. This structured approach allowed for transparency in assumptions and provided the foundation for hazard modeling. Second, the hazard modeling. The results showed that hazard outcomes were highly sensitive to key assumptions such as vent location, eruption magnitude, and wind patterns. For example, the tephra spread at Mount Menengai was influenced both by the frequent events that has VEI of greater than or equal to 4 and prevailing winds. Flow modeling demonstrated how even small changes in vent location could drastically alter hazard footprints. This confirms the need to clearly communicate uncertainty and limitations when using models in decision making. Third is the exposure assessment. The exposure analysis revealed that urban proximity is the strongest driver of risk. Volcanoes near large cities, such as the Mount Menengai near Nakuru or Mount Suswa near Nairobi, pose the highest threat to lives, infrastructure, and economic assets. Importantly, the study projected that GDP exposure could increase tenfold by 2050 in some areas due to urbanization and development trends. These findings reinforce the need to integrate volcanic risk into national and regional planning frameworks. In conclusion, this study applied a structured approach such as combining expert elicitation, hazard modeling, and exposure assessment to evaluate volcanic risk in data-poor regions. Despite limited historical data, the researchers successfully produced hazard and exposure maps for 9 volcanoes across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Cabo Verde. Fogo was identified as the most frequently erupting volcano, while Nairobi and Nakuru were among the most exposed urban areas. The study also emphasized the importance of investing in monitoring and geoscientific research to contribute to global disaster risk reduction efforts under the Sustainable Development Goals and the Sendai Framework. So to wrap it up, even in the face of limited data, this study shown that meaningful hazard and exposure assessments are possible through expert inputs, modeling tools, and structured frameworks. The findings point not only to areas of high risk, but also to urgent needs such as better monitoring, stronger preparedness, and smarter investment in volcanic regions. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section and I'll be answering it. I hope this presentation inspires deeper commitment to disaster risk reduction where it's needed the most. Goodbye and stay curious, because informed action can save lives.